Hello everyone, welcome back to the KMTRADERS channel. So this is the full market analysis volume 115. So just giving you an insight of what we've got up ahead for next week and giving you an insight, well, compare analysis from last week as well. So looking into gold, so yeah, what we were pretty much looking for this week is essentially a turnover to the downside. We started to see that previous weeks, pretty much rejecting that all-time high 260. So as we can see right now, price is pretty much 21, so that's this week's price action from 21 onwards. Pretty much just a very small bullish run up. I don't think this is going to be the full intention for price to take out the highs. I think there's probably one more price move to the downside, and I'm thinking more towards 1880. Into this zone and to tap into some of these areas here. So what I'm thinking for this week with gold is we probably could see a turnover to the downside and probably end up in the realms of 1880. So that's what I'm looking to target. So yeah, I'm also watching the EMAs, but just keeping an eye out of overall price action. But yeah, thinking price can make its way to the downside this week, so just keeping an eye out for that potential move. So moving on to EU. So essentially, we last week we looked at two scenarios. Personally, I think with EU, it's just not really been moving too much. We've just kind of consolidated. But I believe there is some potential moves. But I think for me personally, it got caught out in Asia, so couldn't necessarily get involved within that. So that's perfectly fine. What I'm thinking for this week is we could potentially start to see potential turnover to the upside, which is where we're pretty much expecting price to go, or looking forward for price to give us some sort of pullback reaction. Or the other scenario is that we start to see price selling off into the downside into 1.08, 1.07 as well, into this area here, into the lows. So from this point we could be then waiting for price to eventually make its way to the upside. So pretty much I'm bullish, but we just need to wait for price to give us that bullish intention. But obviously this is if you're looking for a very big move, but you can still make some good moves. So you can still make some good profits from the moves on the downside, the sell-offs. For example, if price was to go to the downside, it's still a good 200 pips. So like I said, if it does want to do that, then we've got those. We've got that length to go towards before moving to the next side. But yeah, that's pretty much what I'm looking for EU. Is pretty much just waiting for either the intention to go higher, or if we're going to break this low, we're going to pretty much head into 1.07. We'll probably see a sell-off during next week, so just keeping eyes peeled for that motion. Looking at NZDUSD. So for this week, my idea was for price to turn over to the downside, rejecting 0.69 as a zone, but we pretty much ended up pushing up higher. I still think that we could push lower. I think we just have to wait for price. It really was quite choppy going through the end of the week. Monday or early on in the week had a huge push up, nice little pop. Looking into next week, I think we could just probably wait for some sort of turnover to the downside. I think it's been bullish for quite a long time now, so I think there could be some bearish pressure kicking in, and that's where I think we can get involved. So looking for price to probably drop off. I'm not saying that this is now going to sell, but we can gear up for price to pretty much push up and eventually turn over at some point. So that's what I'm looking into. Looking at the RSI as well, we can see some divergences forming. So price is pretty much leaning off of momentum to the downside, so just keeping an eye out for that. Makes sense for me why we could expect price to drop lower. AU pretty much just been, like I said, bullish still. We've been waiting for price to turn over to the downside, so I'm still happy about that. But obviously, the move towards the upside could have been advantageous if you were able to get in. let me take a look. So if you were able to get in from here, let's just say through Asia, you know, a nice 100 pip run. So yeah, that's perfectly fine if you're able to get along in that move. I think for me personally, there's more moves to come. I think there's going to be a bigger drop or drop off soon. So whenever price starts to sell off, I think that could be a nice indicator that, yeah, price could start to give us some lengthy moves. So that's what I'm going to be keying out for. So obviously this can still run up higher, but again, we're just trying to follow the trend and the current trend, and we'll see what kind of comes with it. So looking into UJ, this didn't expect price to continue rallying this high, to be honest, but anyway, it is what it is. Price continued to push up a lot higher than what it needs to, what I expected. But yeah, pretty much what we're still waiting for is that sell-off opportunity, and we're still looking for those buys. So if price can come down and, you know, sell off, pretty much we could expect price to do that. Let me get rid of that because I was looking at price earlier from this point. But yeah, we was looking in for price to, you know, potentially turn over to the downside, and I'm thinking that from these levels of zones, so like nice support and resistance. So if I was to extend this further, you know, we can see that this is like a nice dynamic support and resistance, but pretty much I'm looking for price to, you know, potentially dip into 117 if we can get that sell off. It doesn't have to, but you know, what I'm thinking is because price is massively pushed up, you know, for me there is a possibility that price could probably most likely eventually crash lower. I'm not saying it will go low, but you know, we could expect a sell-off to some degree at some point. So yeah, so that's kind of my opinion on it on UJ so far. CJ's looking at CADJPY, pretty much the same annotation again. Didn't think price would look like this for this week. You know, price completely rallied up another 200 pips, I think, which is, you know, remarkable. But I think inevitably we need to wait for price to just push lower. I think trying to FOMO into this, I think there's no point. But again, if you did get some profits from buying, then, you know, that's perfectly fine. I think for me, my next move, I'm just going to have to just sit on the sidelines because I've missed this complete move to the upside. Let's take a look at this. Nice 700 pips move. But yeah, likewise, this can always, you know, easily turn over to the downside. So I think if price is able to move 700 pips, you know, it could at least move 25% of that. So, you know, at least 200 pips can give us a sell-off. So, you know, hopefully we can get involved with that. But yeah, ultimately we're looking for something like this. So, you know, price may want to continue pushing higher and then turn over. But yeah, something just to keep in mind if you feel like you're missing out and FOMO is reaching in. Definitely with Japanese yen pairs, FOMO is probably reaching in. So a lot of people are probably getting involved with Japanese yen pairs. And I don't blame people for doing so. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, if you're involved, you're involved. If it's up to you where you want to, you know, choose to be in a part of the market. I just know for me personally, I'm just going to wait it out, even though, you know, this has just been running and running and running. So yeah, so looking at, so where we were 21st, so yeah, from here had a nice, probably another 200 pip move up. So from this point on, I think we were essentially looking at, if we break 133, could be looking at continuations higher, something like so. But again, I think what I'm looking out for again here is just pretty much this turning point motion. So all we need to do is just wait for price to pretty much turn over, and I think we could be looking at a nice sell-off. So here we could probably expect price to continue pushing higher whilst we do that, but you know, we can combine these two annotations together. So for example, like so, something like this, just keep it simple, and then when price is ready to turn over, it can give off some sort of sell-off pressure, then we can start to look for sales. But yeah, that's something that I'm looking into, all the Japanese yen pairs. Also looking into AUDJPY. Again from here, so yeah, complete rally up again. That's huge. Let me see how this was like another 300, 400 pips. Wow, that's actually crazy. Yeah, so obviously I do hope you got something from this. I think what I'm personally looking out for is, you know, just waiting for that shift to come lower. I'm not entirely sure. what I'll be doing. But you know, if this continues to push up higher, I probably will start getting FOMO myself. But I think that's only natural. But yeah, what I'll probably be doing is just waiting for price to pretty much give us a turnover, and hopefully, whilst price is still pushing up higher, is it going to eventually give us a pullback? So that's what I'm trying to look out for personally. But yeah, definitely sitting on the sidelines for a while for all of the Japanese yen pairs. But let's just see what we can come up for next week. So USD CHF, so USD Swiss franc, looking out for, you know, potential side moves to the downside. I think what we're looking for is pretty much price to come down. I don't think, you know, looking at how price is chopping lower, I'm going to probably change this annotation for now. So what we can see, prices slowly selling off, like so. But what I'm looking at for potentially this week is, you know, is price going to push over to the towards the upside, rallying over to 95. If we can get above 95, I'm looking for a retest continuation play. But the other scenario is, you know, if price doesn't want to make a way to the upside, it could also make one more move lower. So just keeping perspective out for that. And then I'm going to be looking at around 92, 91 range, so around this area. We could be looking out for price to, you know, push lower and then have some reaction. So I'm just pretty much just waiting for price to, you know, give us an idea of where it wants to go. So I'm a bit 50-50 with USDCHF. You know, looking at where price is going doesn't really, you know, stick out to me like a sore thumb, if that kind of would make sense. But what I'm trying to do is to see the overall momentum looks like it's pushing higher towards the upside. So if I was to pick, I'm going to be looking at some possible bullish scenarios to the upside. So that's what I probably will keep an eye out for next week. And similarly with USDCAD, what I'm looking out for this week is, you know, pretty much just waiting for price to either hit into 124, but possibly as an upside look is for waiting for price to you know, potentially show some bullish intention. So whether price, you know, dips lower than 1.245 and then pops back up, that, you know, that's something that we can potentially anticipate. So I'll probably just leave this as the annotation as well. Copy, paste. So something like this, you know, we could get some rebound within this realm, within this range here, or we could get price to break lower and then push higher. So again, I've got alerts placed all over the place. I should have cleaned this up a little bit, but just try and focus on where price is right now around here. So last week we looked at potential retest off this zone. It pretty much, you know, gave us a nice retest and bounce lower. So again, what we're trying to possibly look for now is, you know, moves to potentially progress higher. So we'll have to see if this move to the downside can recover. So I probably will go ahead and get rid of this mark off right now. Yeah, I'm quite happy with how that analysis played for USDCAD. But yeah, ultimately looking for some kind of rebound eventually soon. So looking out for this week, you know, overall looking at what had happened, I think really the surprising pairs was the Japanese yen. Didn't really expect price to really rocket off continuously that much for the third consecutive week. Normally this doesn't really happen, only in special circumstances, but I guess it's something to do with the war that's been kicking off. So that's my only thoughts around that. I think the reasoning towards that again, but I know a lot of people who probably made some good profits from this bull rally, so if that is you, congratulations. But all I know is that eventually this will probably come back into like some sort of consolidation and choppy range price action. So I hope that you adjust the market condition for when that time comes, because otherwise if you're thinking that price is going to rally another 200, 300, 400 pips, I think you may start to see you know, a bit more losses trying to creep in, and you know, your expectations for trading might kind of get blown out. So what I'm trying to get at is that this is a very unique situation in the markets, and personally I don't think this will happen continuously. You know, 700 pip, 300 pip runs every week. Okay, so what I'm personally doing is just sticking to my plan, that knowing that it works, and I understand that this is just a very one-off situation. So with that being said, if you did get any value from this video, make sure you leave a like. If you haven't done so already, make sure you're subscribed, and thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you all in the next week's video.